Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mercy Chero, teacher student from TAMK, and today I'm going to present our impact of loneliness and social isolations in old adults. My presentation will take roughly 10 minutes. If you have any question, you can ask in the link below. You are welcome. Under social isolation and loneliness are severe aspects of social relationship but underappreciated public health risk affecting substantial proportion of their elderly people. People above 50 years of age are likelihood of experience a social and loneliness, and also a risk factors including living alone, um, losing of families and friends, suffering sensory impairment, and all those. Various connect social isolation and loneliness escalate risk of physical, um, mental and condition and such as heart disease, high blood pressure, obesity, Alzheimer's. Also, loneliness and social isolation can be precursor for reducing immunity, which predispose both young and old people to diseases. It also influences diseases progression and act as a precursor of suicidal ideation and the primary motivation for self-harm. Behavioral variations such as poor sleep, physical inactivity, and daily smoking are linked to high risk of loneliness and social isolation. The content in my the content the main key of the research was social isolation, social seclusions, old adults, and health impacts. The content of the text include introductions. In part 2 includes social isolation and loneliness, understanding social isolation and loneliness, predisposing factors of social isolation and loneliness, biological factors, dependence on the risk factors, impact of reciprocity, potential opportunities, methodology, results and discussion. And I discuss about physical health, immunity deterioration, vulnerability to incommunicable diseases, vascular issues, disease progression and poor healing process, physical health impact, suicidal ideation and suicides, anxiety disorder, neurological disorders, sleep problems, and also I have the conclusion. Okay, and the introduction. Humans are social beings. That is to say, there is connection to other by fault of survival. As they become old, most people are left alone, making them live solidarity after when they were younger. The seclusion makes this population more vulnerable to the health issues such as cognitive deterioration, depression, and heart problems. Socials, the social and interpersonal processes, health aging, and longevity widely researched topics today, because in the Smith et al. Claim that all adults who have opportunity to engage meaningful, fruitful activity have a high chance of living long, being in a good mood and having a sense of purpose. The scholar hold that active participation in daily activities help maintain the health and well-being of the elderly and play a crucial role in improving the cognitive system. The excessive mortality is attributed to physical risk factors include obesity and smoking. By understanding the affected elderly daily encountered social networks and decision-making ability, it is possible to design cultural sensitivity intervention to enhance their social integration, health, and well-being. Also, this thesis examines the impact of social isolation and loneliness among elderly, their mechanism and risk factors. Under part 2 of the social isolation and loneliness, we have to understand what is social isolation and loneliness. Older adults, loneliness and social are preferred to a risk of affecting developed countries and subject to all people to medical conditions like dementia, and also the topic is not fully explored about comparison among the mechanisms of the loneliness and treatment of remarkably. Ideally, social can be generated lonely and some individual, while other people loneliness can be felt without social isolation. Um, Social isolation are preferred as a physical isolation encompasses, reduces size and diversity of the social network or irregular contact of family and friends. The isolation increases the genetic risk of loneliness and remarkably predict cardiovascular presentation and metabolic traits. More importantly, measuring social isolation and loneliness significant add despite the variation of the prevalence across studies. Loneliness and social isolation are ubiquitous and significant issues across all the groups. Also, we in part 2 predisposing factors of isolation and loneliness, we have environmental factors. The environmental factors um, the environmental factors include victims are in fear of being robbed, limited available of appropriate service, distrust neighbors, dilapidated surroundings, and restricted meaningful and positive relations. Um, Also, in the case of cognitive impairment, isolation people can be even lock themselves in isolated room like a bathroom during family gathering to relieve their tension. In most cases, this occurs when family members realize how concerned they are about their mental health conditions such as memory loss and Alzheimer's disease. The situation is exacerbated by the victim realizing of the reduced organism of these close people, seeing them after sharing their diagnostic results. We have biological factors. This most isolation research assess the personal behavior and traits of the isolation person. And we have sociological factors. It claims that the old unmarried males, those with low education attain and low income tend to be the most social isolation in later life. Besides, people are identified as a marginalized, include LGBTQ, have been a high likelihood to report loneliness. Strong evidence supporting their escalated risk of being lonely and isolated for adults above 50 all exist. It also significant number of these research show person who subjected unexpected loneliness due to spouse partner demise. Dependence on the risk factors. Both social isolation and loneliness exhibit independence of risk factors, and that loneliness, genetic risk, significant prediction, cardiovascular, psychiatric, and major depression disorders. Those are the risks of the dependence. Impact of reciprocity. Studies like Peterson, Gong, and Hajek 2020 indicate that the risk and impact of social isolation and loneliness are bidirectional and multiply over time. As an illustration, depression and anxiety disorder can result in social withdrawal and loneliness. Reciprocally, social isolation and loneliness can also generate clinically significant anxiety and depression. Then we have the potential opportunities. A loss of sense of social connection and community affect person perception of the world negatively. The National Academic of the Skin Engineer Medicine asserts in that elderly. Okay, we have the methodology. The methodology, but the studies utilize literature review to establish the health team associating with the loneliness and isolation among the elderly. The study constitutes a systematic search on the electronic database including CINAHL, Cochrane, Google Scholar, MPES, and Medline for the relevant published review of the impact of adults, loneliness, and social isolation. A statement impact of social isolation and loneliness among elderly was searched on this library. The inclusion criteria were any types of reviews, English published reviews, all people and target population, and focused loneliness and social isolation and their intervention. The extract information include the definition of the social isolation and loneliness, social, psychological, and biological causes affecting the isolation. We have the results and conclusion. Under the results and discussion, we have the physical health. We have the immunity deterioration. The immunity of the people become deteriorated when they have the social and social isolation. The immunity will be deteriorated. Also, vascular issues. Uh, uh, the blood pressure will increase. The cardiac problems. Also, we have disease progression and poor healing process. In this case, connect in this case, through the connection of social support which influence behavior addition, physical stress response include blood pressure reduce and stabilization of inflammatory response of the diseases. And also we have sleep problems. When we are social isolation and loneliness, the people will have a problem while sleeping. In conclusion, the study set out to establish the impact of loneliness and social isolation among elderly people. The study established that loneliness and social isolation differ. The former refers to the feelings of being alone, irrespective of extent of social contact, while the latter encompasses lack of the social connection. Despite the difference, the two terms have an intricate relationship and have a similar impact on elderly people. Loneliness and aging have a significant negative impact on older adults. Some of the effects are bidirectional and reciprocal. The advanced impact of the dissociations from the rest of the people among this population can be psychological, physical, and social effect. The most remarkable one was disease progression due to non-adherence to protocol, increasing anxiety and depression, inflammatory issues, sleep problems, vascular issues, and suicidal ideation and suicides. That is all. Thank you so much for having time for me to have this presentation. The reference is in below. I will attach the document and you will maybe go through it. Thank you so much for your time. Bye.